You're not lost. You're just wearing a mask so tight it feels like your real face has vanished. There's a weight on your chest that you can't explain. A silence inside your mind, even when the world around you is loud. You look around, and everything seems fine. But something in you whispers, "This isn't me." You wake up, go through the motions, smile at the right moments. You say, "I'm okay," so often. It sounds like your name now. You try to be grateful, try to be positive, try to be strong, but it's exhausting to keep pretending you're not tired of pretending. Maybe you feel like you've lost your way, but what if you were never really free to choose one? What if the version of you that wakes up every morning isn't lost, just trapped? Trapped in routines that drain you, trapped in a personality that keeps you safe, trapped in smiles that don't belong to you, trapped in a life that looks good on the outside, but feels like a slow death on the inside. You weren't born like this. You became this, little by little, to fit in, to be loved, to avoid pain. And somewhere along the way, the real you stopped being loud enough to hear. But pain has a strange honesty. It doesn't lie. It's not here to destroy you. It's here to awaken you. So maybe what you're feeling right now, the emptiness, the confusion, the ache in your chest that won't go away, maybe this is not the end. Maybe this is the beginning. Because only when the false self starts to break, can the true self begin to breathe. And if that's true, then this silence, this sadness, this strange sense of not belonging is not proof that you're broken. It's proof that you're waking up. So let me ask you this. What if everything you're feeling right now isn't something to fix, but something to listen to? It starts quietly. You learn to smile when you're hurting, to nod in agreement when your soul is screaming no, to shrink your voice so it fits the room, and slowly, almost beautifully, you disappear into a version of yourself that isn't real, but is loved. Loved for being agreeable, loved for being easy, loved for not being too much. This is how the prison is built. Not with walls, not with locks, but with approval. You become fluent in a language that isn't yours. You laugh at jokes that make you feel small. You say yes when every bone in your body aches to say no. You become who they want you to be, and the world claps for it. But inside there's a quiet suffocation. No one sees the weight you carry. No one notices the tension in your jaw, the way your hands fidget when you're alone, the way you check your reflection not for beauty, but to make sure you're still passable, acceptable, manageable. You begin to wear yourself like a costume. There's a smile stitched onto your face, a tone in your voice rehearsed for comfort, an identity molded by what won't get you hurt. And at first it works. People like you. You fit in. You feel safe. But the safety isn't peace. It's silence. It's the price of being seen as easy to love. The paradox is cruel. The more you abandon yourself to be accepted, the more invisible you become, even to you. You are applauded for your mask, while the soul underneath it starves. This isn't living, it's performing. A quiet theater with no intermission. And somewhere along the way, you forget. Who were you before the world told you who to be? What did your laughter sound like before it was edited? What made your eyes light up before they dulled down to fit in? What truth did you silence in order to be chosen? This is the invisible prison. It's not made of iron, but of expectations. It doesn't lock you in. It seduces you in. It whispers, be nice, not honest. Be likable, not real. Be easy to love, not hard to forget. And we obey. Because we want to belong. Because we're scared of the cost of authenticity. Because someone, somewhere, made us believe that our truth was too loud, too wild, too much. So we quiet it, until even we can't hear it anymore. But the soul doesn't die in silence. It waits. It waits in the tension you feel when you fake a smile. It waits in the tiredness that doesn't go away with rest. It waits in that soft ache in your chest when you're surrounded by people and still feel alone. And one day, the waiting becomes unbearable. The weight of pretending becomes heavier than the fear of being seen. And something inside you whispers, enough. Enough of shrinking. Enough of performing. Enough of smiling through the ache. Enough of disappearing in order to belong. You weren't meant to survive behind a mask. You were meant to live with your soul uncovered. But to do that, you must see the prison, feel its walls, name its bars. You must recognize that the version of you you've been living was built for their comfort, not your truth. And that realization is terrifying, because if you're not that version, then who are you? Who are you without the performance, without the borrowed smiles, without the fear-drenched identity? That's where we go next. But for now, stay here, in this honest discomfort, in this trembling awareness. Don't rush past it. Don't explain it away. This is the beginning of your freedom, not becoming someone new, but finally, gently, stopping the performance. Drop the mask for a moment. In the comments, tell me, who is the version of you that no one really sees, but is aching to be heard? Pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sits quietly inside your chest, like a child waiting to be noticed. Sometimes it shows up in strange ways, in the exhaustion you can't explain, in the tears that come out of nowhere, in the way you feel heavy in places no one can touch. There's a kind of sadness that doesn't need a reason. It's not about what happened last week. It's about everything you had to bury to survive. You didn't wake up one day and become numb. It happened slowly. Each time your truth was too much for someone else. Each time your emotions made people uncomfortable. Each time your needs were labeled too needy. Each time you reached out and no one reached back. So you learned to be quiet, to be fine, to not ask for too much, to carry your pain like a secret. But secrets don't disappear. They root themselves in the body, in the tightness of your shoulders, in the clench of your jaw, in the way your breath doesn't go all the way in. You started to believe the pain was the problem. But what if the pain is the part of you that still knows the truth? Because pain, when you really listen, isn't trying to destroy you. It's trying to return you to the moment you stopped being you. Buddhist wisdom doesn't see suffering as punishment. It sees it as invitation. An invitation to come home, to sit in the fire of your discomfort without running from it, without numbing it, without turning it into a story, just being with it, like a friend you once abandoned, like a mirror you were afraid to look into. And when you do that, when you really sit with what hurts, you begin to see that every wound shaped you, not as a victim, but as someone who survived what should have broken them. The child who was too loud and got shamed into silence now has a voice that trembles but speaks. The teen who hid their weirdness to fit in now craves authenticity like oxygen. The adult who wakes up wondering, is this it, is actually standing at the edge of truth. Pain isn't proof you're broken. It's proof you still feel. And feeling is the first step back to yourself. You weren't meant to numb your way through life. You were meant to be fully alive, which includes the ache, the grief, the loneliness. You're not weak for feeling too much. You're human. You're healing. But healing isn't pretty. It doesn't always look like glowing skin and calm mornings. Sometimes it looks like crying in the shower, saying no and shaking while you say it, feeling lost and still choosing not to run back to what hurt you. That's real healing. That's soul work. And it often starts with grief. Grieving the version of you that played small. Grieving the years you spent performing. Grieving the love you never got. And finally admitting you needed it. Grieving isn't weakness. It's honesty. It's clearing the space for something true to grow. Because something is growing, even now, underneath the tiredness. Underneath the, I don't know who I am anymore. Something ancient, something sacred, something real is remembering itself. You don't need to rush it. You don't need to fix yourself. You just need to stop abandoning yourself every time the pain comes close. Stay. Just stay. Even when it aches. Especially when it aches. Because the version of you that was never allowed to cry, never allowed to scream, never allowed to need, is still here, still waiting, still hoping you'll finally turn toward them and say, I see you. I'm sorry I left you behind. I'm here now. That's when the healing begins. Not with perfection, but with presence. Freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it feels like a quiet breath you didn't know you were holding. A moment when your shoulders drop, your chest softens, and your soul whispers, Finally, I'm not pretending. Letting go isn't a dramatic act. It's not running away or cutting everyone off. It's the slow, sacred release of who you thought you had to be. You've carried so much: expectations, masks, roles, rules. You've tried to be the strong one, the calm one, the funny one, the one who never complains. And maybe you were all of them, but none of them were the whole truth. There comes a moment when you stop asking, "How do I make them like me?" and start asking, "What do I need to feel real?" That moment is where freedom begins. Because letting go isn't about detaching from life. It's about returning to it. Returning to what makes you feel honest. Returning to your body, your breath, your needs. Returning to the voice inside you that doesn't shout, but has always known the way. You start to notice the weight of things you thought were normal. Conversations that drain you. Goals that were never yours. People who only love the version of you that makes them comfortable. And you begin to ask the most radical question: what if I stopped carrying this? What if you let go of the need to explain yourself? What if you stopped editing your emotions for the sake of peace? What if you allowed yourself to be misunderstood and still loved yourself anyway? Because the truth is, every time you choose authenticity over approval, you get lighter. Every time you say no when it shakes your voice, every time you rest without guilt, every time you stop chasing who you're not, you come home. Home isn't a place. It's a moment when your insides match your outside. It's not about being perfect. It's about being whole. And wholeness isn't achieved by adding more. It's revealed by releasing what never belonged to you. Buddhism calls this non-attachment, but that word is often misunderstood. It's not about coldness. It's not apathy. It's the ability to let things be as they are, without clinging to the need for control. To walk through life with open hands. To love without trying to possess. To show up without trying to prove. You begin to realize that your worth isn't something you earn. It's something you uncover when you stop covering it up. And slowly, the need to perform fades. The fear of being disliked softens. The urgency to be everything to everyone dissolves. You start choosing peace over people-pleasing. Stillness over noise. Truth over comfort. This is the paradox. The less you try to be accepted, the more you feel like yourself. The less you chase validation, the more real your life becomes. Because when you let go of what isn't you, you don't become less. You become clear. Clear in your boundaries. Clear in your yes. Clear in your no. Clear in the kind of life that doesn't require a mask. So if you feel something shifting, if parts of you are starting to unravel, if the mask is getting harder to wear, good. That's not failure. That's freedom. Freedom isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's choosing to rest without guilt. Sometimes it's deleting a message you don't want to send. Sometimes it's walking away quietly, without explaining. You don't have to justify your truth. You just have to live it. And the more you do, the more you realize you were never too much. You were never too broken. You were just too real for a world that worships masks. But you're not here to fit in. You're here to awaken. And awakening begins with letting go. Not of who you are, but of who you were never meant to be. No more masks. No more roles. No more trying to be something just to feel worthy. There comes a moment, quiet, still, almost invisible, when you stop running. Not because you found the answers, but because you're finally tired of abandoning yourself. You sit. You breathe. You feel the ache in your chest that has no name. And for the first time, you don't try to escape it. You let it be there. The sadness, the emptiness, the strange, silent ache that follows you through rooms full of people. You don't push it away. You don't label it. You just let it breathe. This is the beginning of real healing. Not changing your life, but meeting it. Not fixing yourself, but facing yourself. So many of us live in resistance. We fight our pain. We fight our doubt. We fight the reality of who we are in this moment. But what if you stopped fighting? What if you sat with your truth, as messy, flawed, and aching as it is, and said, "This too belongs." Buddhist wisdom teaches us, suffering ends not by escaping it, but by surrendering to what is. And surrender is not weakness. It's strength without the armor. It's power without control. It's love without performance. You begin to see. The more you try to fix your brokenness, the more broken you feel. But when you stop, when you just breathe and say, I am here, something softens. The war inside quiets. The self beneath the noise begins to rise. You realize you were never the voice that said you're not enough. You were the awareness that heard it and never believed it. And that part of you, the part that watches, that listens, that feels deeply, is still here. It never left. It was just buried under years of self-denial. So you start to make space, not for a new version of you, but for the one that's been patiently waiting. You choose rest over proving, stillness over noise, presence over performance. You allow yourself to feel without rushing to label. You allow your tears to fall without needing a reason. You allow silence to hold you, like a long-lost friend who finally found you again. Because the truth is, you don't need to become anything. You only need to stop running from who you already are. Let the world spin. Let others misunderstand. Let the noise pass through. You are not your roles. You are not your thoughts. You are not your mistakes or your past. You are this breath, this stillness, this awareness. And in this moment, nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be different for you to be whole. So pause, close your eyes, and feel what's real beneath the surface. The ache, the silence, the life that still wants to live through you. It doesn't need to be spectacular. It just needs to be honest. This is not the end. This is not the final version of you. This is the return. And in this return, you don't need a plan. You don't need to rush. You only need to trust that silence heals. That being is enough. That you, exactly as you are in this quiet, trembling truth, are already whole. So let the world wait. Let the old stories fade. Let the questions remain unanswered. And let yourself be here. No longer hiding. No longer running. Just breathing. And maybe, just maybe, everything you were trying so hard to become has always been hidden inside the self you've been too afraid to sit with. Now you're here. Now you've stopped fighting. And maybe that is everything.